So you've installed a new trolling motor and left behind holes in your hull. Or maybe you ran into something and scuffed the gel coat off of your boat or jet ski. What you're going to need, some of this Gelcoat polyester gel paste. Now this is a gel coat in a paste form. You're also going to need coloring agent, so white for this one obviously, as well as the respective liquid hardener. This is MEKP, I believe is what it's called, but you're going to need that, a mixing tray, and a spreader board. You're also going to need some sandpaper and other stuff to polish it later on, make it look perfect, but we're going to run through the basic steps of what you're going to need to do to repair something like this. So I'm going to set my stuff right here, so hopefully you can see this good enough in the video. We're going to open up our gel paste. Now when you look at this stuff, that's not going to match. That's practically clear in color. So that's where the coloring agent comes in. Now we're going to take a little dab of that. Probably need just a hair more, but don't want to mix up too much, otherwise it'll just go to waste. Put our lid back on, press it into place. Now we're not going to add the hardener until we're satisfied with our color mix. So our coloring agent, kind of knead this a little bit. I'm going to add a decent sized amount of that. I found that using too much coloring agent is better than not using enough. The only real thing that you're losing by using too much is a little bit of money, because you have to buy coloring agent more frequently. Other than that, it seems to harden up just the same and work just fine. And not using enough, you'll end up with a semi-transparent repair that's just going to look really, really weird. So it's probably really hard to see this on this white paper. So if you grab a different color sheet of something, take just a little bit of that and smear it on there, and make sure that it's got a pretty nice white color to it, and that it has to be really thin before it starts being transparent. So I'm happy with that. It looks nice. So now at this point we're going to add our hardener. We're going to add a few drops of this. Then we're going to blend in our hardener good so that this stuff will set up nice. Now our first step on this is going to be the roughest. We're going to have to mix up more and do this all over again, but initially all we're trying to do is fill in these holes so that there is a solid mass in there, so that when we come back to sand and add further coats to get it up nice and perfectly smooth, that it will all end up setting right. Okay, so now that we've got this first coat hardened up, I'm going to be using a hard block here. These are Durablock brand that I've got. And this is a hard block, so that means that it's not really flexible much. I'm going to use that so that I can get this flat. Now if we were doing a curved surface, you may want to use a soft block, but for this, hard block will be perfect. And we don't want to sand too deep with this, because we are going to have to add another layer in order to get it to be smooth and flush. So a little light sand with this, then we're going to mix up a bit more gel coat and go over this again. So this is 360 grit, which will just kind of take off some of the surface that we've put a little bit much on so that we can get a nice finish later on. So the 360 wasn't really cutting it for what I wanted, so I moved down to some 180 here just to get these chunks off so that we're at a good starting point. Got that sanded smooth now, so we're gonna mix up a second smaller batch of our white gel coat. Now this time we want to keep these just ever so slightly proud of the surface so that then we can sand it back to be perfectly smooth. So I'm putting just a little bit excess on here so that I've got room to sand it back so that it is perfectly level. I think I'd better call it quits there. So we'll come back and sand this shortly, get it smooth, and then start doing our wet sanding and getting it down to where you won't even be able to tell where the holes were. This is hardened up nicely, so we're going to sand it with our 180 to get things started off and flattened out nice, and then we'll move on to finer grits and wet sanding. I've got some 320 here and wetted it down. As George agrees, that basically sums it up. Now this isn't 100% perfect, but it is a whole lot better than having a bunch of holes in your deck of your boat. So there we have it. Some holes have been patched.